Hey, welcome to the BIZ Sister Show. This is the premiere show. I'm super excited. And to launch the show, I have very special guests coming today. So, Will Bowen and his daughter, Amelia Murphy. And so, I'll tell you a little bit more about them. But I'm your host, Wendy Babcock. And as a TEDx speaker, author, podcast host, and the founder of Slam Networking and Profit Up, I have relied heavily on other experts in the entrepreneurial world. And so, what I know what it's like when you need the people you need in your corner. And I want to bring that information right to you. This is being streamed on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. So hopefully you can follow us on one of those platforms, like and subscribe. And without any further ado, I want to introduce to you Will Bowen. Instead of reading his whole long bio, I just want to show you exactly who Will is. So here we go.
Complaining's like bad breath. You notice it when it comes out of somebody else's mouth, but not so much when it comes out of your own.
Will did a fabulous job. It's probably the best keynote address we've ever had.
Standing ovation, very positive experience.
Everybody left with such energy, so excited, ready to take it to the next level.
Ask your wife to make you something else. And the first guy goes, I make my own lunch. We've gotten connecting flights for everybody on board, except 2 people. And he calls out the names, and the guy in front of me grabs his rollerboard and storms off the plane, and I go, you make your own lunch.
All 600 of our employees loved their day with him and what we learned from him.
I would recommend him as a keynote without exception.
I was real impressed. He was a tremendous and humorous presenter.
He was wonderful to work with. He was easy to get arrangements made with.
As soon as I finished doing my segment with Oprah, she leaned over and she said, you know, Pastor Will, which is what she calls me, Pastor Will, she says, I have nothing to complain about. And I thought, of course not, you're Oprah Winfrey, for goodness sake. What are you going to complain about? You're one of the wealthiest, most powerful people on the planet. And I guess my poker face wasn't working very well because I went. And then she said, you know, it's not that I have everything that I have, and that's why I don't complain. Oprah said, I don't complain, and that's why I have everything that I have. You see, Oprah gets that she makes her own lunch. And so do you. So make a decision right now to make that lunch with intention. To not complain about what's going on, but to begin to look at what's going well. And to make that your driving force. And make a magnificent buffet and share it with the world. Will you do that? Thank you so much for your time.
Sweet. Please welcome to the stage Will Bowen and his daughter, Amelia Murphy.
Hello, everybody.
Hey.
Hello,
welcome.
hello.
Welcome to the
Nice
very...
to be here.
Yeah.
I just realized my microphone was upside down, taped on my face in that video.
Oh, no. You're probably the only one who noticed.
Yeah, I know. Well, I've watched that video 100 times, and that was the first time I noticed.
Well, too funny. Oh, my gosh. Well, thanks so much for being here for the very first Biz Sister show. We'd like to share some expert advice, and I couldn't think of a better expert than he who has trained me.
Thank you. My honor. It's great to be here.
So now that everyone knows a little bit about you from the video, I want to introduce Amelia. You want to tell a little bit about yourself and how you fit into this wonderful piece of the speaking industry?
It's funny. Whenever someone asks me, "Oh, what do you do?" I have no answer for them, so I just tell them what I did yesterday because it changes every single day. But really, what I do is, I would say I'm the assistant that works with all of the clients, and really, my job is to make the speaker, make Will look as professional and as on top of it as possible, and also as in high of demand, usually just honestly being like, we're booked that day, but can we do something else for you? So that's kind of my job, is to just be the go-between, and yeah, that's what I do.
I think assistant is grossly underrating what you do. Because Leah closes all my speaking sales on business manager. She closes all my sales on the phone. She does 100% of customer follow-up, making sure that I'm in the right city at the right hotel at the right time in the right ballroom and moving on to the right next place. And so she is the engine that drives the machine.
She's the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Right?
And I'm the curtain.
That's probably, yeah.
And that's pretty appropriate. And so actually Leah was the person who interviewed me when Will put out. So he wanted to put out like it was on Facebook, I believe, saying, hey, we're looking for people we want to train to put on the stage and talk about a complaint-free world. And so when I applied, Leah was the first person that I heard from, and we did a Skype interview. So that was my first meeting. And I'm trying to think how old you were, because you're very wise beyond your years, I have to tell you.
Yeah, I usually lie about my age in the opposite direction.
Right?
I think I was 20.
Were you? Okay, yeah, because around my daughter's age, because I have a 25 and a 22-year-old, but you never guess that. You're so, definitely Will raised a very...
She edited my most recent book when you were 15.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's been 6 years. Yeah.
Yeah. So for those watching, what happened was back when Will put out that he was looking for speakers, people he could train to be on stages, and I applied for it, I was working full-time at a hospital. I'd been there for 20 years between the clinic and the hospital side. And I had no idea what I was getting into. Honestly, like I thought, I want to be on a stage show. That'd be great, but I'm not a speaker. And so Will created this whole program to train. There was 10 of us. I don't know if there was a full 10, was there? There was 10 of us that went through the training.
Exactly 10. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I don't know who came up with the whole space monkey term, but I loved it. It was Will. The first ones they sent out into space, the first crew to be launched onto the stage. And it was fun. So we had, how long was the training? My brain, it was, how many weeks did we meet?
I want to say 10 weeks.
10 weeks? Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe it was 8 weeks. I don't know, but it was every Saturday. Plus there was other material and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we had partners we worked with, to go through the material and practice. And, it was a lot. I mean, I think about all the things we learned besides just what complaint-free world is. We learned to use the acronym SPEAK. There was all these different things of, your stage presence, what not to do with your arms. It's kind of like, I don't know what to do with my hands. Because, that stuff's important. You don't think about like where your arms are, like if they're crossed in front of you and where you're drawing your attention to. So that stage presence was very important. Pausing, which I have to learn still. I have to remind myself, breathe and pause, Wendy.
Well, the most important thing is to pause.
It is.
Yeah.
And even
it lets people catch up with you, and it also makes them wonder, what's going. People who have gotten away from you, it brings them back. So.
Right. Mm-hmm. And it helps with your train of thought too. Mm-hmm. If you just kind of pause and think about where you're at, what point you're trying to make quick, because when I get off on a tangent, that's when I lose my place in what I'm talking about. Yeah. But if I can slow myself down and pause.
Yeah. And if you naturally have pauses within your speech or in your presentation, when you do inevitably, after years of speaking, have a brain fart, you can allow yourself that pause, and it doesn't break the cadence of the rest of your presentation.
Right.
I resemble that remark.
Right. Well, and I think, the video I played, your promo video that I played, like the perfect example is when you talk about Oprah. And there's that nice long pause. And then bam, then everyone's cracking up. Because of course you're Oprah, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah.
And it's those things that if people pay attention to those things when they're watching, incredible speakers, those are the things that really make your performance really memorable instead of rushing to that punchline.
Your number one, you've got to be engaging. That is the number one thing that you want your client to say and the audience to say about you, because the opposite is disengaging. In other words, oh, I drifted, I fell asleep. So the way you do that is you use your voice as an instrument, you use melody, you use pauses, you use pacing, and you're able to then keep people with you. And if your content is solid, then you're able to convey it. So the rule number one is you got to just be engaging for people.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like I'm giving a speaking lesson now.
Well, and that's okay, because that's what we're talking about. This month is the speaking industry, because, if it wasn't for going through the complaint-free training, I never would have been on a stage. I mean, I shouldn't say never, but I mean, I don't see that happening. That literally launched me into where I'm at now. I mean, I've given a TEDx. I mean, that wouldn't have been possible before, but also I watched you go through and do a TEDx as well. And your whole experience was a lot different than mine, and so, but just
mine is fodder for the next version of my book. It's
right.
Yeah.
And so Leah also went through the same training, even though you grew up with your dad with the complaint free. How was that for you then, going through that same training?
Oh, it is so easy to think you're going to nail something when you've never done it.
Right? Like, my dad's the world authority on complaining. I got this.
Oh yeah. I was like, I totally got this. And because one of the things with the training that we did is it was anyone who wanted to could come to Kansas City, and we would actually record your presentation. And I had done advanced public speaking in school. I remember I had to do a presentation for school one time, and there was a kid behind me, and I was the first to go. And the kid behind me goes, "Suck so I don't look as bad." And I was like, okay. So I walked up there, just gave my presentation, sat back down, and he goes, "I hate you."
Oh, no.
Thank you, I guess.
Right.
But I still remember when I got up for the first time in front of a real crowd. It was terrifying. And it's really, really hard when you don't have those tips and tricks in your back pocket. When you don't know, okay, I have an outline. Even if I forget what I'm supposed to say next, I know the next bullet point that I can go to. Or knowing to pause, because my big thing is I talk fast. I talk really, really fast. And I'm like, I can burn through an hour-long speech in 15 minutes if I have a big enough gulp of air. Like, I can do it, not a problem. So learning all of those little things to kind of keep in your back pocket. So then when you do get up there and you're nervous, you're unsure of what's really going to happen, you have almost that muscle memory and those little things to help you get through it and make it a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable for you.
Right. And there's nothing more intimidating than learning from somebody like Will Bowen and then going to his place, and now we're going to record you, and he's behind the camera looking at you. Like, that's not intimidating at all.
It's just me.
In a good way.
It's just me.
Right. But, you have someone who's got all these speaking experience under his belt. You've been on Oprah, people, all that good stuff. I mean, and somebody who's just starting out, we're already nervous. You're already nervous to get on stage and talk.
Yeah.
And even though it's a room full of people who get exactly what you're doing, everyone there who came to that was very understanding and stuff. But and I remember during my portion of it, of course, I'm going to forget the guy's name now because I was quoting or talking about and this is the rest of the story. And I got the guy's name wrong, even though I knew it.
Who did? Paul Harvey?
Paul Harvey. I think I said John Harvey. And we're like,
yes,
okay.
That's right. You said John Harvey.
I'm like, why did I say that? So it's those little things like if you're going to say somebody's name, you have to really make sure that you have the right name and information. And I know my name recall is not good in person. So I've known that if I get on a stage and I have to recall somebody's name, I have to really make sure I have it before I include that in my presentation because you don't want to mess it up.
Can I just throw out two things real quick? Because I want to make sure we get to them. And that is if anyone wants to speak, get to the next Toastmasters meeting you can get to. They're everywhere. There are several here in my little town of 12,000. And I'm mentoring two new speakers right now, and they are both going and having a great time. One is a Toastmasters and afterwards happy hour at a bar. So I want one of those. And the second thing is read the book by Chris Anderson, the founder of TED Talks, the researcher of TED Talks. And he teaches you how to write a speech. It's the best.
Yeah. And after you told me that, and after you told me that too, I bought it on Audible and listened to that right away. And it's very helpful, and that's just is when new speakers are starting out, they really don't know what resources to grab first. There's so much out there. You can Google anything and find so much crap. You can get a lot of advice, but it might not be the right advice. So,
everybody's got something to sell you when you want to be a speaker. I was talking to one of the guys I'm mentoring, Phil. He's got a brilliant story and he's really great. And he says, okay, so the first thing I have to do is write a book, right? And I said, that's about step 5. Step 1 is get thee to Toastmasters. Stand up, start speaking. Step number 2 is figure out who are you? Like you're the kindness person. Wendy is the kindness lady, the kindness woman. I'm the no complaining guy. People have to have a peg to hang your mental hat on. And so he has a great story. He's trying to figure out how to put it into a word or a few words.
Right. Yeah.
I think the other thing with,
go ahead. Go ahead.
I think the other thing with speaking, my poor husband would never leave his basement if he could. He does not like people. I'm surprised he likes me. But for college, he had to take a public speaking class. And it involved getting up, and it was online only, so he thought he'd be safe. No, you had to then find a group of 12 individuals or more and speak to them. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to be a bonding experience for you and I. He did not feel the same way. But I told him, I'm like, you have to do the speech. He's like, well, I already know what my outline is. I said, no, you have to give the speech. And I'm going to tell you everything that's wrong with it. And then you're going to fix it. And you're going to do better the next time. But you're still going to do stuff wrong. It's the idea that it's like, well, I don't want to mess up. Oh, you're going to. So mess up in the privacy of your own home or in front of someone who's going to lovingly tell you that was terrible and give you good advice so that by the time you get up on stage, you've done it so many times that it's not a big deal or not as big of a deal.
Yeah, that's a good point because putting something down on paper, it might look fantastic, but when you say it out loud, it sounds so different and I don't think they realize that. I've written a speech where I go to say it out loud in practicing and it's like, oh, that doesn't roll off my tongue right. That's not,
no, it doesn't.
In my head it sounds good, but it doesn't come out right.
I'm really lucky because I was in radio for 15 years. And a lot of that time I was a copywriter and an announcer. And so you write something and it sounds awesome as you're clickety clacking on a typewriter back then. But then you read it out loud and you're like, it's like rural juror, from 30 Rock. Remember that rural juror? Just does not work. Doesn't flow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And practice is key. It really doing it over and over and over. And I hate practicing. I have to admit, I hate practicing, but I know I have to do it because that's where you find where you're going to mess up. If you don't
record my speeches. on my phone, listen to them over and over and over again. And then when I did my TEDx in Kiev, I practiced my speech twice a day for 6 weeks, every single day.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it helps
People
'cause
don't realize, they think that people stand on stage and they just happen to shut. You work your butt off, you know?
Yeah. And that brings me kind of to, booking speaking engagements. Again, people, they have this misconception that speaking is, oh, well, you're just getting on stage for an hour. Why do I need to pay you for that? It's just an hour of your time.
Yeah.
They don't realize all of those hours it takes to write a good presentation, practice it over and over and over, readjust, recalculate, rewrite, practice some more. And then all the hours it takes to get a speaking engagement. And I think I've run into, newer speakers who think, oh, well, this can't be that hard. Like, you have no idea. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of behind the scenes work. So when you
Well,
first
we
started
have a
getting,
staff of 4,
yeah,
5 now,
Yeah.
counting you, that drive our engine. So we've got a staff of 5 people to
Yeah.
get me gigs, close the gigs, et cetera, follow up with everybody. And don't let that frighten you away, because Wendy doesn't have a staff of 5. Well, she's got some people, but you don't have to begin that way. You can start out on your own.
Right. And that's the
Yeah.
thing is, finding a good mentor, someone who's, walking the talk and doing it, not someone who's just telling you that they're doing all these presentations. I've seen that over and over. Oh, I'm the best there is. And yet I can't find their presentations online. And I've come across that. But they're teaching people how to nail speaking gigs. And so if you have to find someone who's really walking the talk. And so it was interesting learning from you, and also the transformation, even just since I've been doing the complaint-free world, of how we originally started getting speaking engagements and how that transformed a little bit and how we approached it, so I think it's always a challenge getting speaking engagements, but if you do your research and you get the right people in your corner, I think it can make it a lot easier.
It's
sure.
really, for years I thought, how do you find speaking engagements? It is not hard. It is not difficult at all. There's a directory that I've recommended, the Gale directory, GALE, that you can get at most libraries. You can get it online. You can dissect it down to associations that do events. You can then send out campaigns of emails relatively inexpensively with MailChimp or something like that.
Yep. Yeah.
If you look for obstacles, you're going to find obstacles. If you look for opportunities, here they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for me, one of the biggest pivotal things when it came to actually getting more gigs, getting higher quality gigs, better paying gigs, and by quality I mean people who really want you, not someone who's just filling a slot, was calling people and just picking up the phone. Hey, and the other thing is, they want to know that you're a real person, especially if you found them, if you have been prospecting them. And I was always terrified of what will people say if they're like, well, how did you hear about me? Because I'm like, I didn't hear about this association until I went to call you and then looked what your association was. But I'm always very honest. And because I think honesty is the best way to go about it. And I say, oh, we have a member on our team named John. And we know that people like you are always looking for speakers. And so we try to do the legwork for you and reach out and say, hey, we think we'd be a good fit. What do you think? And I've never had a negative reaction to it.
Wow. And I love that
approach. Can I just, Wendy, throw in that, like you said before we got on the air, we're so long-winded, we're going to talk all of it. But what people don't realize is not only do we have to work hard to hone our craft and the art of speaking, but Leah, over years, has learned how to speak to people on the phone and ask those difficult questions. And, oh, you can't afford Will? Then what is your budget? Oh, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When will you be making that decision? There's certain, you don't just get on the phone and have a conversation. It's a process of moving them towards a decision. And
Right.
she's really, really good at that. So
I think we all need a Leah, honestly.
well, I have to tell real quick.
I have a script.
Yes.
Yeah, the story of Lee and I basically deciding to try doubling what we had been getting for our speeches. And I said to Lee, if you do it, I'll give you a good sized bonus. And within 3 hours, she had sold, boom, regular client that would have been, at the normal rate or a little above or whatever, and boom. So it's if you don't ask, you don't get.
Because you
she's
don't
a
know.
master of doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you say, everybody needs a Leah, that's true. And for those of you who haven't picked up on it, I go by Leah to most people,
sorry.
but formally my name's Amelia. I just realized I've been sitting here saying my name's Amelia and Leah. But the reason I think that we've been able to grow so much is because of me. And it's not necessarily the incredible things that I've been able to do. It's more that a speaker doesn't know their own value, because most people don't know their own value.
Ooh.
I introduced myself as his assistant and was quickly corrected because I see the value in him. I have been traveling to events with my dad since I was 10. Then when I got a driver's license, I would piece out of school and drive him to events and had a lot of fun with that, road trips and all this. And he did. I'm not saying I did any of this against my will. I had a great time. You kidding? Did you hear the part where I wasn't in school? It was wonderful. But it's all about, for me, I think, I have something that I believe people will get value from. And that is Will. That's my dad. That's this message. I've seen how it's changed people's lives. I have that belief system. So when I go to a client, I know they need something. They need something very specific. And so I was actually on the phone with someone the other day and they said, well, I don't usually do these sales calls. I said, I don't do sales calls either. I'm terrible at them. And they're like, what? I said, this is a compatibility call. You need something. You are in need of something. What is it? And I'm like, tell me what's going on. And so they will. And because people love to share, they love to connect with other people. And they'll just go on and on and on. And you know what? Sometimes at the end of it, I go, well, it's not a good fit. You're looking for someone who can be industry specific, who can do this, who can do that. I'm sorry, he's not a good fit. That's happened maybe twice. Usually they're like, we're tired, we're burnt out, we're exhausted, it's toxic, we need help. And I go, I have something that can help you. And once you have a product, have something that can truly help them and fix that problem, it's easy after that.
Yeah. And I think seeing that in what they're telling you, as they're going on saying, well, this are the problems, you drawing from that and saying, well, okay, well, here's the first thing you listed. This is what he does. Here's a second thing.
Yeah.
He does this too. And this is how we can improve, or help your association, your business, whatever it is. And really listening to what they're telling you.
The other thing that, as far as what I would recommend for people to read, it's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Ooh.
It's incredible. Yeah. Someone stupid apparently told me to read it, so
I love it.
I read it probably when I was 19, when I first started working with Dad, and I've reread it since then. But it's all about getting the little yeses. So when I finish, I always say, when they tell me about, what they need, I go, well, can I tell you about Will? Yes. Okay. So I go through my whole thing of yada, 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 why he's God's gift to you. And at the end of it, I say, but you know your organization better than anyone else. What do you think?
Oh, wow.
And I have them tell me why they think he's a good fit, or they'll tell me why they don't think he's a good fit, and I can do it all over again.
Wow. Yeah, we definitely need to clone you.
Well, actually, sincerely, as you know, we were talking the other day, we're getting ready to do we're getting ready to entertain a new class of space monkeys. And with this time you get Leah, because what Wendy did not get 5 years ago was Leah's phone knowledge. We weren't closing speeches on the phone until 2 years ago. We actually hired a consultant and said anything over $2,000 should always be closed on the phone. And Leah started doing it, started working on a script, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Leah's actually going to videotape herself talking to clients, her side of the conversation, so people can see what she says.
Right. And I love that. I can't wait to myself just to hear that, and I think it's important exactly what you do, because it is different than me getting on the phone and trying to sell myself. I think that really is a job you need to hire somebody for. Because like you said, it's easy for me to knock down my value. And I have done it over and over, and I could slap myself, because I remember going through the training, give your price, and then shut up.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And what I would do is like, well, you're probably a nonprofit, or well, this, and I'd be like, I can probably take off. And it's like, shut up, Wendy. And so I'm trying to learn over the years, and I still catch myself. But usually I try and be like, okay, here's my fee. And that's it. And then if they're like, well, then
your next question always is, what is your budget? You see, Leah, what is your budget? Exactly. Your budget? And they tell you.
Yeah.
And so we've developed, as we told you this other day, we've got a thing coming up in December. I'm in one city. I got to go to another city 2 days later. Somebody wants a city in the middle. They're willing to pay for the airfare and a much lower fee.
Right.
Well, I got a day to kill anyway. Fly me to your city. Let me knock one out and fly me on. So,
yeah. So there's ways around, like, to negotiate. It doesn't have to be about lowering. You can lower your price, but there's other things you can do too. Maybe they want more of a workshop. Do you want to do, instead of in 1 hour, maybe they're looking for 2 or 3 speakers, and you can say, if you want, I can just come in and do a workshop. And that worked for me once. I had a bank that wanted to hire me, and they're like, well, your fee is above, what we want, but we also we're thinking about doing a couple other speakers. And I said, okay, well, what are you looking for as far as those other speakers? We already talked about what I provide with complaint-free business. And they said, well, it's kind of similar. I'm like, okay, well, what about this? What if I just came in and did a 2-hour workshop instead? They're like, oh, you would do that? Yeah, I would do that. And then they hired me for the fee. And I was going to be traveling there anyways, so there's just a little extra time I was there, and it worked out great. So there's ways to negotiate your price without, you can bring your price down. Like Will said, you could, if you're traveling somewhere and it's nearby, you don't have all the expenses, but there's ways you can negotiate without, doing things for free.
And figure out the areas that you're willing to sacrifice. That's been a big thing as I have started to sell more and more, and having that final say. It used to be whenever I would be on the phone and they'd quote something, I'd be like, yeah, hold on. And call my dad and be like, are you willing to do it for this? Da, da, da. But now we kind of know the areas that are negotiable, of saying like, oh, their budget is only X, which is half of what we normally do, but it butts up against another event. Or it's in a fun place and they'll pay for extra nights hotel. Or
see, that's what I'm
like
always
that.
looking for.
Oh,
it's in a winery in Napa Valley and you get 2 nights hotel and sign me up.
Right.
It also, the thing that I preach, and I actually was just on the phone with someone today, and I quoted the fee, and it's the big new I get a bonus fee. And she was like, I don't know if we could do that. And I said, well, we have 2 other events that same week. We have some flexibility. What's your budget? And then she asked for another event because it was a bureau. And I said, she goes, well, what would be the fee for that? This, which is the previous cheaper fee that we negotiated on. And I said, no, it would be the bigger fee. Yeah. And she says, well, they probably can't afford that. And I said, well, we don't have any events that week. You always come up with an excuse is what I'm getting at. But I said, so we have some flexibility, but you need to let them know what our price is because we need to maintain price integrity. Because it's a small world in the speaking business. And so I've had people call me and go, well, I'm not paying you X because so-and-so paid you Y. You need a reason why so-and-so paid Y.
Yeah.
And it needs to be, I had someone, they're like, well, so-and-so paid Y. And I said, well, the Y event was in January in Florida. Your event is in Massachusetts in February.
Yeah.
We're not taking a price cut.
Right.
And you've also used the well, we've taken a lower fee because Will's going to see his family. You know,
Right.
and you've also been straight up. Will wants to go snow skiing.
Yeah.
You
Right.
know, I mean, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with telling people that. So,
Well, and I like too, something I learned from you is when you actually send the invoice, then always include your actual fee, even if you're giving it to them for almost nothing, or if you're doing a free one. You give them that and you show them the discount, and you can write in a little blurb on the invoice if you like why. This way, when somebody contacts them, oh, we saw that you had Will Bowen. What did he charge? They can, let me look at the invoice. Okay. Well, oh wow, he usually charges this much, but we got it for this much.
right.
You know, and so at least
Yeah.
they know what that dollar amount is. So it's not just like, oh, well, he came in and do it for free for us. Well, oh, great, he'll do it for free for us too.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's also when people come back and try to negotiate further. This also happens a lot when you have clients who are asking for that lower price point and you say, oh, okay, well, we can do that. That's okay. Then I have the conversation with Will. We agree on it. And I say, you know, the fee would be this. However, we would do it for this. And then sometimes people will come back and go, actually, could you do it for even less? And you have that proof of saying, we're already giving you a 40% discount.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
So.
And I think that's part of knowing your worth, being able to say no. And again, when you have someone who's working for you for that, it's a little bit easier because you can say, no, this, I know what the worth is. And, you know, where it's, if it's yourself, you're like, well, yeah, I could probably, you know, just get in more speaking under my belt, but that's not a good way to do your business either.
I'm going to get 5-star reviews whether I'm getting paid nothing or $20,000.
Right.
Leah's the one who's able to help us get a good amount for each speech, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
But I have, like we've all said, you know, if Leah was trying to sell herself, you know, I could sell Leah better than Leah can sell Leah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was like telling this story. Wendy, you've heard it before. I remember the exact last time that Dad quoted a client himself. It was when I had just started picking it up, doing some of the client stuff. I was still doing a lot of other stuff, and handling clients overwhelmed the crap out of me. And so I was handling some emails, Dad was handling some, and he said, oh, hey, I got, someone asked me what my fee was. They said they're a small nonprofit. They only wanted it for an hour. They wanted to know the lowest I could go, yada, yada, yada. So I quoted them $5,000. And our fee at the time was more than that. And I was like, oh. And I looked it up, and they were having their event at the Omni Hotel in Chicago. And we never heard from them because they had a budget that was so much more than that.
Yeah.
But it's a good case of, you know, when you're the one selling yourself, you're like, well, that's what I would be willing to do for, you know, do it for.
Yeah.
That is such a good point. It's like, you know, I think this car is worth X, and somebody says, oh no, it's worth 80% less.
Yeah.
You know, when you're shopping, then they all of a sudden you go, I don't want the car. There's something wrong with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Good point,
You know,
Leah.
yeah, and that goes with a lot of different things. Even with, we've been working with a lot of contractors this year, and we met with a concrete contractor that says, I never want to be the lowest price. He said, I know I'm going to provide a lot of value, do a great job. I never want to be the guy with the lowest price. He said, because that talks about who you are. So if you undervalue yourself, they're going to undervalue you and think, oh, this guy must not be a really good speaker, or she must not really, you know, preach what she says, and you're not going to get paid as much.
Yeah.
You know, you have to know your worth, for one.
So it's a combination of, well, as you and I were talking about the other day, the art of speaking, which is how to stand on stage, what to do when you get there, the business of speaking that gets you there and makes it happen, and then the content, which keeps people engaged and inspired. So it's ABCs. Yep.
And that's what people remember that too. Like when you get off the stage, that's the best time, one, to get testimonials, which I've also learned. Everyone's all excited. They're rearing to go. They're like, oh my God, that was great. They're practically high-fiving you, and, you know, and then
that was great.
You
Where's the
put a camera in
restroom?
their face.
As soon as they get off.
Let me just.
That was so awesome as they're going by.
Right? Thanks. But no, that's the best time too. And I've talked to so many speakers that it amazes me because, of course, I've only learned from Will that that's the best time to get a testimonial, where some people are like, I never thought of that. Oh, yeah. I always send a follow-up email. I'm like, but you're letting that sizzle go right down. And the chance of getting a testimonial at that point is like nil to none. Even if they thought you were the best speaker in the world, you're not going to get that much excitement, out of it. And so when you record them on site, like, that's perfect.
Well, and I tell my clients at the AV check, I am not here to speak. I'm here to get a testimonial from you as soon as I get off stage. I say, I'm going to point my camera at you and I'm going to say, who are you? Where are we? Who did you just see? And would you recommend him or not? And then while I'm holding the camera, I'm behind the phone, the camera going.
Good job. Keep going.
I kid you not. I prompt the living crap out of these people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it makes sense.
I actually was, and I was speaking with the Bureau a couple days ago, because when you work with the Bureau, you work with their contract. And I wanted, in our contract, it says, if Will does a good job, we want a video testimonial right afterwards. And so I asked the Bureau, I said, is that okay that we do that? And he was like, eh? I said, yeah, we do this. I was like, have you not been to our website? You saw all the reviews? He was like, well, yeah. And I'm like, how do you think we get them? We run up to people and put a camera in their face.
Yeah. Right. People don't just voluntarily get off the stage. Oh, hey, can you want to record me? I've got so much great stuff to say about you right now. Mm-hmm. It doesn't happen. Usually they're like, oh, I don't know. But
actually, with me, it does.
Does it?
It does. Yeah, it does.
It does not.
Just kidding.
I go to enough events where I'm like, it used to be that he was like, that person, get him. And I'm looking at it across the wall trying to get to people.
And getting the right person, to give you that testimonial, because that's going to weigh a lot on your website. Someone else is coming, that's the president of that association and giving that glowing testimonial. Cool. Yeah.
Well, and one thing we just discovered, blinding flash of the obvious, is to ask for the email list of the attendees. Oh. And then we send the testimonial of the person who put on the event to all of the attendees.
Oh, wow.
Which reminds, wow, yeah, I mean, I thought it was good, but the big kahuna said it was good. And a lot of times then they'll remember, hey, we could have Will for something else.
Right. And I think what that does too is when that person who hired you gets the feedback, oh, we really enjoyed him, that's good for that person. Not kind of like, oh, I did a great job. Like, wow, I really brought in the right speaker, and so they're going to recommend you more too. So we only have a minute left. So I'm going to ask you guys both to give a really good tip, something for someone. Think of a new speaker who wants to talk on stage, whether they have a platform or not yet. What's one big thing you would tell them to do?
I've got one right away.
Oh, so Leah, really? Really? You got something?
Yeah.
I'm so surprised. Yes. You were sitting here going,
I know what she's going to ask.
Look like Jaws on the screen.
Yeah, I don't have an off switch. We've yet to find it. What I would recommend, and this is the thing that when I speak with clients, they're surprised by and thrilled by, and it's something very, very simple. We have what we call a client resource page, and it's a Dropbox with a forwarding URL, and it has his presentation in variety of lengths. It has his intro, it has his bio, it has headshots,
PowerPoint,
and it has a W9, things like that. And it's everything they need from you all in one spot. And it makes their lives so much easier. And it makes us look incredibly professional. And it limits the back and forth communication so that they can hire you and that big old check mark, and they get to move on to the next thing.
That's an excellent tip. As someone, I've hosted events and had speakers on my stage. And boy, the ones that can get you that information quick and have it all in one spot is perfect. You don't got to hound anybody. It's all right there. I love that.
That came from years of people asking us, we need this, we need this, we need this. And we just put it all in one spot.
Yeah.
My turn?
Yes. What's your glowing tip?
There are a ton of people out there trying to sell you a lie, and that is that anyone can be an expert. And if you're into honeybees, then you can get paid millions of dollars speaking on honeybees. That's nonsense.
Yeah.
There are three types of personal development. There is wealth, there is health, and there is communication. People pay the most for wealth. So try and figure out how to help people have more money or save more money. Number two is health. That is not common in the association, et cetera, industry, but you can certainly branch out in YouTube, et cetera. And lastly is communication, and that's relationships and things like that. And that's actually, even though we fall into all three genres, that's where we fall in communication. And the other thing is, if you choose to be a speaker, you can do it.
Right.
Full stop. Just the only thing that keeps you from doing it is you. Because I took a picture of myself and put it on a bulletin board when I was Leah's age. I was 25. And I surrounded it with Les Brown, Wayne Dyer, Earl Nightingale, Brian Tracy, etc., with me in the middle. And I looked at that every morning. And now I sit next to them at the National Speakers Association. So anyone can do it. Just set the intention and stay with it.
I love that. Thank you guys so much. I'm so appreciative that you both made time to come on this first premiere show with me. Again, I wouldn't have
of course.
been on stage if it wasn't
true
for
honor.
that.
You're our good friend, and we love you very much.
Thank you guys so much. For everybody else who's watching, if you enjoyed this and got some great tips, I think we dropped a lot of great information here today, stuff that people don't necessarily share. I think people like to just dangle a little bit like, oh yeah. And I think bringing true value and giving real tips is more helpful than the dangling thing and making you chase down how to do stuff. So appreciate all your honesty and giving those great tips. Please be sure to subscribe to the show so you don't miss it. We're on YouTube, LinkedIn, and 2 places on Facebook. So if you're here watching now, make sure you share it with a friend, especially if they're an entrepreneur or want to be in the speaking arena. So with that, thank you guys so much. We will see you next week.
Thank you.
Our honor. Thank you.